So welcome to the People Manager training, first one that we're going to do. This is focused on roles and responsibilities. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to go over the structure of this training, the goals and of this particular session, like how to set objectives and how to think about setting goals. We're going to talk about job description, RACI, which is a framework for project governance, but I think is a very useful way that we can talk about sort of just checking who's responsible for what. And I'll explain that when we get to it. And then I'll have a worksheet that you can sort of use to take away. I'm going to make all of these slides available. This recording will be available. You can, we'll get to that stuff. So starting out with the structure. So we're going to do 1 hour twice a month. This is a 1 hour lecture, which is what we're in right now. And then I'm going to also do a 1 hour workshop. I haven't added that to the calendar, but you can just know that this is going to happen. This People Manager thing is going to happen every 2 weeks in some form. So this lecture, like today, is going to be pretty dense. It's going to focus on one theme. You're going to have takeaway worksheet. You're going to have access to the slides, and it's recorded, so you can rewatch it if you want, because as I said, there's going to be a lot of information. The workshop is going to be some case studies. We're going to work with breakout groups, have discussions, and this is really where you're going to get to do a bunch of the hands-on stuff that's not day-to-day. I'll have time for Q&A. And it won't be recorded. The workshops aren't recorded. This will be recorded. And I want to make sure that the workshops themselves are not recorded, because I think that's a good way for us to learn and have a safe space for that learning and discussion. I will, at some point in the next 2 or 3 weeks, send out an offer for Ask Me Anything for the Q&A session, and I'll also request any topics that anybody might want to cover. And you guys can, at any point, I mean, at this point, I think everyone pretty much knows that I'm relatively accessible. So if you want to reach out to me and make a suggestion, or you have questions, you can absolutely do that. So some notes about how I think about people management as a whole. Like, first of all, there is no one size fits all for management and leadership. The style that I have works quite uniquely for me because of who I am, the type of person I am, how loud I am, how present I am, how all of these things are things that I have constructed over the years that fit me more authentically as a person. But I've already met plenty of wonderful, even in this company, wonderful managers and leaders that just have completely different styles. Some are more extroverted, some are more introverted. You kind of have to be authentic to you. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to go over a bunch of goal setting frameworks, communication frameworks, and really just pass along a set of ideas that have come to work for me. This is a lot of like throwing stuff against a wall and seeing if any of these things land for you, because you ultimately need to figure out what works for you. So take some notes, look into what's interesting to you. If you're not sure, like, hey, I like what you said about the SMART framework, but I don't really get it. Can you send me some more information? I'll send you some good articles. You guys can also use, ChatGPT to ask questions, or Google or Bing, or I don't know, whatever you want. But like, you can also ask me to go deeper on specific topics in the future. Ask me for support if you're struggling with anything. Ask your leaders for support if you're struggling with anything. But ultimately, like, I want us to also have a group of peers, which we're going to start, happening in the breakout sessions, where you're going to start to feel more comfortable asking for support. Because like the interesting thing about management is not just that there's no one right way to do it. It's that like there is a level of vulnerability that makes this easier. And the sooner that everyone, and this is something that in my experience, everyone has to go through, the sooner that everyone realizes that your manager, or you, if you're the manager, you don't have all the answers. And you can say, I don't know, I'm not sure how to handle this situation. Let me get back to you. Let me talk to somebody else. Because you're probably not the first one to go through a particular problem, but there is a great support structure here to make sure that we handle these problems and help leaders, new leaders, experienced leaders, get to the best answer possible. And it's okay to show vulnerability while doing it. So why am I doing this? Well, you guys have heard me say this before. Everyone's heard me say this. A rising tide lifts all ships. I want everyone to be better people managers. I want everybody to be able to um, just create a better environment for their team. And people management is a skill. It absolutely is a skill. Oftentimes, what I'm sure we've all seen is you're an engineer, you're good at writing code, and all of a sudden you're managing people. These are completely separate skills, and yet there's some assumption that because you can do one, you can do the other. And I know that's not the case, because I think as far as being a people manager goes, I'm pretty good at it. And I think as far as writing code, I was never very good at it. I was good enough, but it's just where my skills lie. And so I want to make sure that everybody understands that people management is treated as a skill, and that we are all working to up level ourselves in places that we feel we need more support. And so I want to share the knowledge that I've gotten over the years, and hopefully you guys can, you all can use that knowledge to help run your teams better, because if your team is successful and the teams next to you are successful, then we're all going to end up being successful. So, and frankly, I learned a lot of these lessons the hard way. I didn't really have a mentor that I could go to, and I never really had great managers until very recently that I could ask questions to. And I still have people that come to me from 2 companies, 3 companies ago, that ask me questions, that ask me advice. And I still go to some of my older managers, my former managers that I had really good relationships with. So I find when you build good relationships with people, you can maintain them, and they're still valuable to both parties in the future. So that's why I want to do this sort of a thing. So what are the goals of this particular session? So I want everyone to be able to fill out the worksheet after the lecture. Now, the worksheet is not mandatory. It is, hey, we talked about some stuff, and if you want to put some of that into practice, you can fill out the worksheet, but it's not like I'm not going to be coming and banging on anybody's door asking where's the worksheet, right? I also want everybody to know how to create an environment that sets teams up for success and sets individuals up for success. That is not like, hey, I'm going to give you everything you need to do that today. What I'm doing is giving everybody enough so that we can define personal objectives for people, team objectives for you and the team, and learn how you can evaluate objectives that are being given to you as by your manager, and say, does this make sense? And you can understand the value and how to define roles and responsibilities within a team, or of your team within other teams, and ultimately just create and communicate alignment, because that's a really big deal. Being able to align on what everybody's job is and what would make them successful in that job. And also for team leaders, just to generally have a good vocabulary or structure to be able to help define roles and responsibilities. Because this is something where it's like, you can ask somebody what their job is, and the answer is like, here's what I do day to day. But if it's not clear to you what your role is, or how you fit into the team, or how you fit into the company, you can just define things by what you do all day. And that's maybe not the best recipe for success. So you're going to hear a lot of themes over the next 45 minutes, but I would sort of reduce all of the things that I say down to 4 conceptual themes, which is creating setting people up to create the right environment for success, and you setting up the right environment for success. You want to reduce confusion about the things that are happening and what people's responsibilities are. You want to increase alignment so that it's, you're not, you don't have multiple people doing the same thing, or you don't have multiple people responsible for the same thing. And really all of that is about fostering good communication. So what we're going to focus on today is what success looks like from the employee perspective and from the manager perspective. And in almost every case, we're both, right? We're an employee and everybody has a manager. And what's actually the reality is that success looks very similar for a lot of people. And like, this is not one of those, oh, we're a family, we want everybody to feel good. That's not what this is. Like, we're here to do a job. Like, this is our profession that we show up to every day. And so for a lot of people, success is simply just tell me what I need to do and let me do it. And so that's what we're trying to do, is focus on those goals where we tell people what we expect of them, and we know what's expected of us, and then we just do it. Now, when you're an individual contributor, that's sometimes your fingers are on the keyboard and that's a lot of what your focus is. And when you're a manager, sometimes the tell me what I need to do is like, okay, you need to make sure people are happy. You need to make sure they're clear on their goals and their objectives and how to get there. And you've removed blockers. So it's not as easy to like, hey, just tell me what to do and get out of the way. Sometimes you're the person who has to do that. But it sets up a scenario where you can focus on the goals and you give people a destination and help them get there. Now, just to focus on that for one moment. The thing that I really like about focusing on the goals and giving people a destination is people who work directly with me. So folks on the TLT, you will have experienced this with me a lot. I might have a very strong opinion about how we get from point A to point B. I may even have experience or have done it before. But when you have really good people, sometimes your way, even if it's right, is not going to be the way that motivates people. And so I've tried to spend as much time as I can saying, hey, it's not important to me how we get there as long as it takes roughly the same amount of time. And here's where we end up. And this is the criteria for success, or here are our goals. And so the more senior you get, the more senior leaders that you start working with, nobody really likes to just discreetly be told, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. Some people do, and that's fine. Like, that's okay. As you start working with more people, you start to learn where on the spectrum of management people want. Some people like overbearing managers. Some people hate it. Some people are somewhere in between, things that they know versus things they don't know. And this is like you learning your people. But for me, one of the things that I've always found difficult is just to say, here's where I want to get. If you have questions, I'm here to help, but let's get to this point. We all agree this is what we do when we get, this is what the goal is. And then you can tell me if you need help getting to that goal. Talking about team objectives. So the technology organization has objectives as a tech team. This shows up in OKRs, and we're actually going to talk about the Q2 OKRs in a little bit, because I think it's really important to understand where we fell short, and we're just going to talk about mine. And I will be very clear about what went well, what didn't go well, and sort of talk about how we make improvements there. But individual teams have objectives. Some of those objectives ladder up into organizational goals. Like, for example, one of the teams has a goal that's to put out a new product by the end of Q3. And that is an organizational goal because it contributes to revenue. Some of the objectives are team specific, like, okay, we need to get control over some of these things that we didn't own before, this new plugin that we didn't own, and now we need to understand it. Some of those objectives might be like, hey, we want to get Java upgrades done because we've got security problems, right? So there's some of these things are team and some of them are organizational. And so understanding how to differentiate between them to help your team set those goals is going to be useful. Objectives are things that give direction, focus, motivation, and you can measure them, right? Like, we're going to talk a little bit about this on the OKR side. So I want to be careful about how I define measurement here, but you can track progress towards these objectives. But again, here's that word alignment. So within your team to organizational goals, you're really just creating alignment and saying, okay, hey, here's what you need to do. Here's what you need to work towards in order to be successful. So I'm going to talk about two goal setting frameworks. One of them is SMART, which is, you can see in front of you, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals. And then we're going to talk about OKRs. There's a couple of different ways to look at it. I would look at SMART goals as like more individual goals, right? OKRs are, here's a framework that is specific, measurable, and tied to business objectives. So goals, so things inside of OKRs can also follow SMART, but they're sort of like a little bit separate, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But when you set a goal, it should be all of these things: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail. You can read these, and some of these are pretty straightforward, right? You don't want to say we want our sales to go up. You want to say we want to increase our sales by 4%, or the example, add $10,000 in sales and new logos by the end of the quarter and 3,000 in upsell, or whatever it is. Measurable is like, can we do it, right? Saying I want my sales to go up, yeah, that's measurable, but that's binary. So it's measurable to say by 10,000 for new logos and 3,000 for cross sells or something. Is it achievable? If we say, hey, we want to increase our sales by, $10 million this quarter, and we've never in our lives, in the history of this company, had a $10 million quarter, probably not achievable. And what you're doing is you're setting people up for failure, right? Because you're not giving them something that's achievable. So saying, if the last quarter, if the last comparable quarter, so Q2 of last year, we did 1 million in sales, and then we say, hey, we want to do 1.1 million, that's probably achievable, right? We have proof points that say we get there. Relevant, is it relevant to the, you cannot give the technology team a goal of increasing sales by 1 million a quarter, because they're not the salespeople. So is that goal relevant? But you can say, hey, we want to make sure that we are enabling our sales and customer success organization to have something more to sell, which is the example I gave earlier, like we're trying to launch a new package. That's relevant. That's our responsibility in tech to create that for our sales and customer success team. And time bound is, hey, we want to do this in this quarter. We want to have 3 new services deployed by the end of next month. Things that are like, we've got proof we can achieve it. And as long as things are prioritized, you can hit your time scale. So there's a couple of examples. So I just talked about SMART goals, and I like to think about those as more goals in isolation. And OKRs, as I said, are mostly tied to big business goals. And technology uses the OKRs at the team level as a guide. I haven't really talked about Q3 OKRs, even though we're right at the edge of starting Q3, but that's because we've been working on the transformation side of things, and I'm going to do Q3 OKRs a little late because there's going to be more people involved, and this is going for us to be a little bit of muscle building, because there's going to be a lot of folks in this room who are going to work on the OKRs for Q3. So I haven't really pushed it yet, and then we're going to do Q4s on time. So let's take a look at my goals. I'm not going to go every line item, but I will talk about a couple of them. So first of all, speak at least 6 town halls. We didn't hit that. I didn't have 6 town halls. I had, I think, 4. And there wasn't one outside of tech done. There wasn't more than one outside of tech done. So I hit 5 out of 6. But my objective was to increase the transparency in the technology organization. So even though I did not have all those town halls, did I reach my objective? I sent out emails that were in replacement of it. I made sure that there were messages put out, like not just by me, but through the team leads. So I'm still really trying to hit that objective, even though I didn't quite get the key result to support it. We didn't do any demo days, but we have still increased the transparency of the technology organization by agreeing to make roadmaps public, for example. And create a global roadmap that looks 70 days out. That's part of what we were trying to do. We didn't quite get there. We're going to talk about that in a future town hall about where the roadmaps are now. But again, if the goal was to increase the transparency, we ran into a couple of hurdles. Some of them we're solving with these lighthouse projects. Some of them we're solving with the JIRA reorganization. And which brings me to the next point. Objective 2, create a deeper quantitative understanding of technology operations. So as we start to move to this new JIRA setup, like that will help us create deeper quantitative understanding of technology operations. So some of this is with Gainsight, and I know some of that work's been done. Some of this is with JIRA, but even if we're not hitting all of these key results, like you can see that the objective that we're trying for is still how we're moving as a company, as a technology organization. I don't think I need to spend too much time talking through any of the ones in Objective 3, but I think you get the idea. Like if you wanted to look at how these things are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, or time-bound, you can see that it meets all of those as SMART, but they're also somewhat tied to business objectives, because we know that when we are able to better keep track of the things going on in the business, we're able to make better data-driven decisions, which is a lot of why I wanted to have a deeper quantitative understanding of technology operations. So you can sort of see the through line between the goal setting, how it ladders into business objectives, and how I keep that thread all throughout. So two of the worksheet questions are, what are 3 to 5 goals for my team? And what are 3 to 5 goals for me? Now, I know we have the goal setting in ADP. Everyone still has to do that. Great, we'll get there. I'm not super worried about it. We can get there in a month or two. But understanding how to create goals is the first step towards creating a successful environment for people on your team, because it gives them something to work towards, right? Telling people just get Jira tickets done, we've all been there. Like that's not really the easiest way to do things. But 3 to 5 goals could be, you've got, and I would encourage everybody to sit and do this for yourselves, for your team, and for, everybody is for the most part on 2 teams, right? You're on the team that you're the leader of and the team that you're and your boss's team. So you can figure out what 3 to 5 goals are for you on that team, for you on your team, and for you on the team that your boss runs. And this is like a very helpful thing where you can look and say, hey, here's what I think are 3 to 5 goals. And your boss could look at it and be like, what are you talking about, Eric? Those are not goals that I would set for this team. And now you've got a discussion to make sure that you have alignment. And if you're wondering about how to refer to those, how to reference whether or not those goals are, intelligently set, you can make sure that they hit that SMART criteria. That's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So now you know how to think about setting goals. So the question becomes, what are the right goals to set? How do we define those roles in order to ensure that those goals are met? Those are 2 relatively straightforward questions. Now, I know that it might feel like some of this information feels or sounds very basic, but these basic concepts of looking for success, structuring success within your team, these are things that a lot of people leave out because they just assume like, well, people are engineers, people are product managers, they know their job. Yes, for sure. We don't often hire people that don't know their job, but we also want to know how to make sure that everyone feels like they can be successful in an organization. So doing this basic legwork is actually a really important step for making people feel like they can succeed. So why are roles important to define? Some really obvious stuff, but again, it's these basic things aren't done across the board. And I think we need to be diligent as leaders in making sure they happen. We want to reduce confusion and conflict. We want to help create an environment where people can focus and create that environment so that people know how to succeed. So what does it mean to be successful in my team, and what qualities are required to be successful in my team? This feels a little bit more abstract, but let's give some very specific examples, right? Let's talk about what I, as a leader and a manager, want in my team. These are not the only things. There are also deal breakers that I'm not going to discuss, but I want anybody on my team, for their teams, to have clear vision and strategy. Now, those things are not built quickly. We are spending time to put together those strategies as a company so that we can filter them down to the team and everyone can break apart their pieces of it. And also it's a little bit of bottoms up to say, hey, we know some of the right things, we're going to pass that up the chain. But having those clear vision and strategy is, again, a way that people can be successful. Create trust and open communication. I'm sure everybody has heard me use the term psychological safety more times than they care to think about, but this is really important to me. I want everybody to feel like their voices can be heard and that nobody's going to be shot down for having an opinion. And if you ever feel like that's the case about whether it's your manager or another conversation you've had, tell me, because I don't accept that kind of behavior in my organization. I want everybody to feel like they have the ability to have an opinion and speak that opinion. And not be shunned or punished for it. And by creating psychological safety in rooms and for teams, you get better collaboration and teamwork. And that's things that I expect everybody to do. And if you were to sit in on on a technology leadership team meeting, you will hear a lot of collaboration that happens in that room and then outside of that room. And I'm very proud of how far the team has come, even in the few months that I've been here. And I want to see more of that spread throughout the organization. Diversity and inclusion. Now, I know it's a little bit difficult for me to say that we've got a very diverse team when it's mostly white males on the technology leadership team, but that's where we are now. But I hope that we are sort of, even though we're not doing a massive amount of hiring, that we're sort of being diverse about the types of people, the types of ideas that we include, and the diversity of background and experience is also incredibly valuable to me. So when I say diversity, inclusion, that's also inclusion of ideas from diverse backgrounds. I also want to make sure that the ability to give and accept feedback and admit mistakes is relevant. We are in the middle of a rather large organizational transformation. We absolutely did not get everything right. There were a lot of very, upset people at various points of this, and we're still going through it. And if you noticed, people had opinions, and I don't think anybody said, "Hey, suck it up, like this is where we are." For the most part, I would hope almost everybody was listening. And I talked to a lot of people who had interesting feedback and said, yeah, you know what, you're right, we got that wrong. Or, hey, here's why we did it. We're not going to change it, but thanks for bringing it up. And here's how we're going to make sure that we slowly improve things over time. So I am very willing to admit some of the mistakes that we made. I'm actually very willing to admit all of them. But we did make some mistakes over the last, however few months of this transformation, and also continuous learning and adaptability. So we are in a room that is sort of me forcing people at some level to be continuous learners. I am not, this is not like a steadfast requirement, but people who are not continuous learners are not usually as productive or effective on my teams. But I do expect people to be adaptable. If we need to change, if we need to, if we find we did something wrong and we need to adjust, that's adaptability. And so learning why we did that wrong and how to improve, that's continuous learning. So these are all things that, as I said, are qualities that are sort of required or helpful to be successful on my team. And so understanding that you have to have these abilities are some examples of what you can have to be successful. So writing that for your team will also be very valuable. And I'm not talking about a laundry list of things, 3 to 5 qualities, totally reasonable. Why do we want clarity with the roles? Again, we want to tell people we have this goal of making sure people know what it takes to be successful, and not telling them every little step, but saying, if you get here, we will consider this to be successful. So there's some implicit assumption there that your definition of success is correct. And this takes a little bit of practice, right? Because you might say, I need a Java developer with 20 years of experience. And it's like, well, no, maybe not. Maybe you just need somebody who's gotten pretty good at writing, Spring over the last 3 years. And that would also make them successful. So, finding those things finding your assumptions are correct is also like a validating your assumptions. That was what I was looking for. Validating your assumptions are the things that are also going to be valuable in this thing. So what will lead to the individual success and team success are sort of important in that definition. So one of the ways that I've done this over the years, and I've done this a little bit here, is creating a job description in reverse. So I'm going to give 2 relatively quick examples. So reversing your own job description. So start with a basic job descriptive template and fill it in reverse, meaning write the things that you did in the last 30, 60, 90 days that you believe made you successful in your current position. And things that your team did as well could also be fit in there, because you as the team leader driving the work for that team. And you can also write a couple of things that you should have done in the last 30, 60, 90 that you believe are necessary to improve your team's success. Maybe you didn't do a great job of collecting feedback during the retrospective, and you think that doing a proper retrospective after every sprint is something that's valuable for your team. So knowing how to do that doesn't mean that you're failing at your job if you don't do a good retrospective and you put that in your job description. It also is a thing that you say, hey, you know what, this is something I need to work on. I don't have this down pat. I'm not an expert at everything, but I'm going to continue to improve that. And you can also abstract things that you wrote down into skills and experience. You don't have to just say, well, I delivered this feature. Fine. But you could also say, well, I need to know how to deliver a microservice, or how to, convert from, like, if you're going to succeed on my team, you need to have experience with converting Java to Go, because that's a thing that we do. Like, I'm not saying that we're actually doing that. I'm just giving an example. So reversing a job description for you, and then you do the same thing for your team members. So what did this individual do in the last 30, 60, 90 that made them successful? What skills should they have in order to be more effective than they were? Or if they were, top level effectiveness, like, you don't need to include that section. And you write the components that make that person successful in your job. Now, if you have a team of 3 to 5 software engineers, you don't have to write 5 software engineering job descriptions. You can just say, same thing applies for a junior, and senior is this, junior is this, right? And you can write one and do it. If you have a cross-functional team, then you may have to write 2 or 3 to be useful. But just sort of knowing these things can help set these individuals up to be successful. So in theory, you can use job descriptions for performance evaluations. Like, hey, here's what I expected to happen. Here's what actually happened. And you don't have to write these. They're not set in stone. You can write a job description, and then, the requirements, the skill sets needed of the team change. And then you make the adjustment, and people can learn new skills, up leveling them, and say, hey, this is 2 months ago, we didn't know how to need to know how to use Hibernate. Now we need to know how to use Hibernate. And so that's a skill that I would expect. Like, that's perfectly valid. I just talked about what homogeneous teams are. So if you have, 5 specific software engineers and they all have roughly similar skill set requirements, then you can include that. You can also sort of use the job descriptions to assess your teammates. And I don't mean in a like, oh, Eric's not doing a good job kind of a way, but it's like, hey, you know what? Eric's actually really good at this particular thing. Like, I think it'd be helpful if he taught other folks this. Or, Eric's really good at retrospectives. Like, maybe he can teach some of me, myself, and some of the other managers how to run an effective retro. And like, we can all up level there. And again, there's the retention of diversity in these things. So as you're writing them down, like, it's okay to have somebody with 10 years of PHP and they're writing Java now. And it's like, that's not a strike against them. It means they've got an understanding of multiple languages, as an example. So we talked about setting goals, and a little bit about how to think about them. And now your team, if you've done this, now your team and the team members know their roles. So how do we communicate that responsibility? Like, how do we create that alignment? So first off, again, I keep reinforcing this because I want everybody to realize, like, our goal is to create the right environment for people to be successful. So we're ensuring that everyone has all the kind of right information to do the work that they need to do, ensure that the right people are doing the work. You don't want like a PHP developer writing Java. That doesn't necessarily make sense, unless they know it, of course. And you want to know that the right people know what the work is and when it's done. So sort of keeping people up to date, the right people up to date. So there's a governance framework called RACI, and RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And I'm going to go into details about that on the next slide. I don't necessarily want people to get hung up on, hey, we should do project governance for all projects. That's not why I'm talking about this. In fact, RACI in a lot of projects is going to feel like overkill. It's going to feel like too much. But what it really does, and the reason that I'm talking about it, is that it creates a set of really easy questions to cover your bases, to make sure that the right people are responsible for work, who's accountable to make the decision, who should be consulted, who are the subject matter experts, and who should just be informed that there's progress, there's not. So I think a lot of us do these things intuitively. We're like, oh yeah, Eric should really know about this thing, or, product should know about this thing, or engineering should know about this. And so we kind of say like, oh, this, engineering should be informed here, product should be informed here. But this is just this, for me, it's always been a helpful set of questions to say, who is the responsible party? Who should be informed of this? Like, just giving myself when I run through that RACI matrix in my head, when somebody's like, hey, we're going to introduce this new thing, I'm like, great, who's responsible for it? Who should be informed afterwards? Who are we consulting to make sure we've got the right people in the room, etc. So they're an easy set of questions that helps create alignment and potentially reduce conflict and duplicative, effort. So multiple people doing the same thing. So, what is RACI? So I just said, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. This is pretty self-explanatory. Who is assigned to do this work? Who is going to be doing the work? That's the responsible person. Who's accountable, right? Like who is Eric going to get mad at, or who's going to get mad at Eric if something goes wrong? And who has the authority to make decisions, right? Sometimes people don't necessarily feel like they have the ability to make a decision. You say, yeah, this is above my pay grade. So knowing who can make those decisions, so it's not like you have two domain leaders, a product manager and an engineer saying, I can't make this decision, it's got to go to Michael, or I can't make this decision, it's got to go to Vlad, and then nobody makes the decision. It's just saying we know who's accountable for making certain decisions. So it's not like, oh, I was expecting you to make it, and you have like Spider-Man meme and like two people pointing at each other saying like, who's supposed to decide this? We've lost a couple of days of work waiting for this decision, and we still don't know who can make it. So just saying, who's accountable for these? Who should be consulted about things? Like, are the stakeholders involved? And so a lot of the work that we do is tied to customers. And so maybe the customer should be consulted, or maybe the customer success person should be consulted. Maybe they're just informed. Maybe we just need to give them an update. Like, hey, we're working on this thing. You'll get an update every 2 hours or every 24 hours or once a week while we do this. Who has to be kept up to date about it? Or, hey, if we run into something, can we talk to you? Can we talk to this individual? It's just a set of questions that is, like I said, a very healthy and constructive way to just make sure that we cover who can do what, who should do what, who should know what, et cetera, et cetera. So because I said project governance, and that's like a really boring phrase, and I'm sure people are like, I don't care about project governance. We don't do things that are that complicated. I just gave some very oversimplified versions of this. So in a very specific way, here's a couple of examples of how it can help you. So who's responsible for specific tasks? Who should be informed of various situations? Which person or people in or out of the domain are accountable to make decisions? If you're a team lead, which decisions do you make? Which decisions do you feel you should be consulted on? Which decisions depend on members of your team? Which can they own? It really just aligns everybody about these are the people that can do things, and these are the people that are doing things, and these are the people who should know things. So again, it really fosters clear communication. And once you sort of do these a couple of times, you get in this mindset where you're like, okay, I understand. Okay, I know who's responsible. I know who's accountable. I know who I should consult, and I know who's informed. And you don't have to ask yourself all of these questions. It's just a good checklist. So this was roughly the amount of time I wanted this to be. I've got a couple more slides after this. I think we stop at about 30 slides. So I'm going to give the conclusion. I'm going to talk a little bit about the worksheets. So throughout the course of this last 40 minutes, we talked about various ways, goal setting, objectives, roles and responsibilities. Like, all of these things are incredibly valuable to create environments for success. Not all of them are going to work for you and your team. Some of them you need to just step through, but setting SMART goals, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, these things are how you can help you and your team find the right kind of success. So define what it looks like, align everybody on that success, give them descriptions of their roles that they can fulfill in order to succeed, and then communicate that information to everyone to create alignment. So that was the main stuff that I wanted wanted everybody to walk away from. So for the worksheets, it's not like an actual worksheet that you could like print out. It's like you'll see it on the next slide. It's just a handful of questions and you can copy and paste them or however you want to handle it. But again, it's not mandatory. We'll discuss the worksheets in the workshop. And so if nobody fills them out, that's not going to be stellar. But I think even just, hitting 2 or 3 questions, just to have stuff to talk about for the breakout groups, I think will be helpful. If you do decide to fill it out and you want me to give you feedback, you can always just send it to me. You can send it to me over email, send it to me over Teams, whatever it is. And I'm happy to either set up time with you or just give you asynchronous feedback. This goal is not measurable, or this was really well done. Do you think you can achieve this, etc.? And I think this kind of thing is the first set of steps to start adding some structure and specific skills to your people management world. So the actual worksheet is this. This is just a collection of things throughout the last 40 minutes or so where I talked about the goals for me, goals for my team. All of these things are the worksheet questions that are scattered throughout the presentation, put in one worksheet. So that's really it. I know that this was very dense. I know that I felt like I rushed through a lot of information, and there is a lot of information here. So I want to reiterate a couple things. First, these people manager sessions are not mandatory. I would encourage people to come. I think this is the kind of skill building that we all should be a part of. And this stuff helps me as well. It reminds me of things that I do that I need to improve on. And just going through these things, I think is helpful for all of us to build those skills. These worksheets are not mandatory, but again, I think it'll be very helpful for you. And the workshops, when I add them to the calendar, hopefully later today, I'll remember. These workshops are also not mandatory, but showing up will help you build trust in yourself, trust in your peers, help you learn from people who you will get put into breakout groups with and can learn a lot from. I just from talking to people on a daily basis, learn quite a bit about, who you are, how you manage, how to engage with people. And these kinds of things are very, very helpful for me. So the last item that's not on here is that just as a reminder, if you have any questions, if you have any comments on this, I'm happy to take feedback, positive or negative. And I appreciate you all sitting through this, listening. I will share the slides and the recording with you sometime either later today or tomorrow so that everyone has access to it. Thanks again for your time. Thanks for your support, and good luck and on the journey of people management.